It's been a real sapphic summer, she says and gays. Queer women and bands have topped the charts. New and veteran artists alike are coming out swinging with bops like Lunch, Talk Too Much, Hot to Go, and My Lady of Mercy. Boy Genius is on every playlist. Muna is selling out Madison Square Garden. Victoria Monet is getting major Grammy recognition. And allies like Charlie's XCX are featuring women-loving women icons in their music videos. Megan Thee Stallion is... Megan Thee Stallion is queer, right? Can I just check that? Oh, yeah, Megan's continuing to put out banger after banger. Maybe it was the Barbie movie prominently featuring an Indigo Girls song. Maybe it was the Tracy Chapman Renaissance. Maybe it was because Lucy and Yak had a massive sale back in January. But queer women everywhere are climbing the cultural ladder. And that's what we're going to unpack today in this video about the rise of sapphic pop. Because the more that I listened to sapphic pop playlists and started doing unnecessarily in-depth dives into songs and lyrics, the more I saw patterns emerging. And these patterns, as always, have me red string connecting not just the songs of this summer, but music from artists decades, sometimes even centuries into the past. Four pillars of sapphic music began to emerge, four classic themes that thread their way through all of these artists' work and create a framework for what has been connecting queer women's experiences, their joys, their sorrows, and their anger since records began. When I was figuring out how to structure a video on this kind of topic, these four themes jumped out as a logical way of bringing you on a journey through not just the songs blowing up at this moment, but also what's going on behind them. 1, sex and relationships. 2, jealousy and longing. 3, self-discovery. And 4, responding to homophobia. I wanted to pull out a classic example of a song from this most sapphic of summers for each theme. And at first I struggled to choose. There were a bunch of options, but then I realized that there is one artist, in fact, one debut album, that had somehow hit them all. Chappell Roan's The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. Increasingly well known for her iconic hair, her camp glittery costumes, and a song about kinky karma performed in clown makeup, this lesbian legend is conquering the music industry with queer hits that are quintessential new gay pop. A 10-year overnight success, Chappell Roan is your favorite artist's favorite artist, with the No Skips debut album that's taken the world by storm. Her music feels revolutionary to many listeners. It's mainstream without sacrificing any queerness. None of the songs feel toned down for a heterosexual audience. There's explicit references to sapphic sex in Casual, portrayals of toxic, messy relationships in Coffee, and an unapologetic queer joy in songs like Hot to Go. Chappell, alongside her queer peers like Renee Rapp, Megan Thee Stallion, and Billie Eilish, are at the head of what's widely being coined as the lesbian renaissance. It's easy to look at all of these queer artists and feel like their work is unprecedented. Society tends to ignore or downplay the contributions that lesbians make to, well, anything. The music industry is no different. Everyone got annoyed at Jojo Siwa for claiming to have invented gay pop, but let's be honest, how many people before this year could name more than 5 lesbian musicians off the top of their head? Those who were already deliberately seeking out this music, maybe, but if this wasn't something that you were actively looking for, if you were just consuming the kind of music that is being recommended to you online, on radio, it would have been difficult. The current wave of sapphic artists are the heirs to a musical legacy that stretches back over 2,000 years. However, their predecessors are continually erased in the mainstream narrative. If you read about what's going on at the moment, a lot of people covering it are kind of talking about these artists as if they popped out of nowhere. And so we're going to try and chip away at that in this video. Now, for the sake of this video, we're also going to define sapphic music as music created by queer women, or occasionally those that identify within that experience who might also consider their gender more nuanced than that. It's a messy concept. Queerness is messy, but you get the idea. This definition does exclude a lot of music that is beloved by many queer women, from Bruce Springsteen to Taylor Swift, but we're skipping these artists because it would make this video 8 hours long, and I have to draw the line somewhere. So settle in, grab a drink, maybe a snack. If you, like me, have ADHD and are probably planning to listen to this video while you do another important task like laundry or cleaning your kitchen to motivate you, then get on that, I guess. Because we're going to be deep diving into the meaning behind iconic lyrics, some emotional, cultural, and historical context for your favorite lesbian bops, and a whole section on the frankly filthy lesbian blues singers of the 1920s that made my friend do a genuine spit take when I told him about some of the lyrics. First up, Red Wine Supernova, sex and relationships. Perhaps the most obvious place to start when it comes to common themes in sapphic music is sex and relationships, because, well, they're a pretty huge theme in popular heterosexual culture as well, but perhaps even more so in queer culture. After all, they are the defining element of many people's queer identity. Songs about sapphic relationships have made regular, if not necessarily common, appearances on music charts in recent decades. But the 2010s saw an explosion of songs that explicitly address queer sex and desire. Particularly in 2018, we got both Janelle Monáe's Pink and King Princess's Pussy is God. Now, I want to note here that obviously not all women have the same sexual anatomy, and there are queer women who have never had sex with other women at all. But the sex acts and bodies described in these songs are absolutely connected to sapphic desires and experiences, even if they aren't the only possible sapphic experience. Both Pink and Pussy is God are songs about queer sex, which, while they're not entirely explicitly sharing graphic descriptions of these acts, are certainly explicit in being queer. Both artists are singing specifically about sex with a partner who has a vulva, and both songs reference cunnilingus, more or less euphemistically. Monet sings Pink like the tongue that goes down, while King Princess is obviously describing a certain element of their partner as God, and then slyly follows up with, I've been praying for hours. Connecting sex and religion, queerness and profanity, tying a spiritual act of prayer using hands and mouth to worship a deity to what those body parts might be used for in other more sapphic contexts, it's a whole thing. This tradition is continued in more recent hits like Ashniko's Slumber Party, which kind of incredibly features the word cunnilingus itself in the chorus multiple times as the singer turns tropes around female friendship on their head. Me and your girlfriend playing dress up at my house, I give your girlfriend cunnilingus on my couch. And most recently, Billie Eilish's song Lunch was a smash hit at the beginning of this summer, hitting number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the US Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart. In this track, Eilish fantasizes about having sex with a woman, singing, I could eat that girl for lunch, yeah, she dances on my tongue, tastes like she might be the one. In all these songs, the specific sex act functions almost as a shorthand for the fact that these are queer desires. The singers don't just describe attraction to someone and a desire to sleep with them, they intentionally foreground a particular sex act that they enjoy performing or want to perform on the subject of the song, expressing a specific desire and not caring that they might alienate listeners who can't relate. And so we come to our Chappell Roan example. Queer desire and sex has been a common theme in her work since the release of Naked in Manhattan in 2022, which, spoiler alert, we will be talking about in more depth later in this video. Many of the songs in The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess deal with these subjects in some way. The album begins with Femininomenon, which Roan describes as being about disappointing dating and sexual experiences with men. She goes from this opener straight into the second track, Red Wine Supernova, specifically and explicitly about sex between women, contrasting the fact that, in her own words, no man could literally get me off, with the sapphic experiences that she imagines as fulfilling and explosive instead. She said that Red Wine Supernova is a campy gay girl song that captured the magic of having feelings for another girl. I pack the song with fun, raunchy lyrics that make it feel like a night out flirting with the girl across the bar. She also said that it's just about really going bold into this is about a woman and not shying away from that. This is evident from the opening lines when Roan sings, she was a playboy, Brigitte Bardot, before describing what she and her partner find attractive in women. I like what you like, long hair, no bra, it's my type. She focuses on feminine attributes that she finds desirable and emphasizes that she and her partner both have the same type of woman, an experience that is itself unique to queerness. She also described a variety of sexual dynamics through the course of the song. In the opening lines, the love interest showed me things I didn't know, sinking her canine teeth in the side of my neck. In this verse, Roan describes herself as waiting for you. I just want you to make a move. And at the end of the chorus, she's left choked up, face down, burnt out, a dynamic where the love interest seems more dominant. Roan is inexperienced in addition to taking a more submissive role. It's an experience reflected in the lives of many queer women, left without traditional methods of sex and relationships education that's relevant to them by their schools or family members. They might know the way it's meant to work with a man, but with women, they're relying on the other person to lead the way. By the second verse, however, Roan is ready to take a more active role when prompted. She sings, you just told me, want me to fuck you, baby I will, because I really want to. But by the bridge, she's confidently inviting her partner back to her place of her own volition. I heard you like magic, I've got a wand and a rabbit. So baby, let's get freaky, get kinky, let's make this bed get squeaky. This progression seems to reflect Roan's comfort level increasing when it comes to expressing queer desire and increasing confidence in sexual scenarios. Unlike her disappointing experiences with men within the first track of the album, each subsequent experience with women in this song adds to her excitement and desire. It's a key difference that solidifies this sexual thematic focus as a key part of her voice as a sapphic and lesbian artist. It isn't reducing her lesbianism to sex, it's celebrating and developing it as a key aspect of her identity without shame. Interestingly, Roan has discussed in interviews the distance between her own feelings about sex and her personas in her songs. I have such a difficult time as Kaylee with sex. I have a hard time watching sex scenes or flirting with people. I get really uncomfortable with hypersexual things. But as the drag queen that I play, Chapel, she's not like that. She's very confident and comfortable singing about those things. Like other artists, Roan alludes to sex which has a particularly sapphic flavour, in this case making references to her wand and rabbit, sex toys which are commonly used by women both alone and in partner sex. Even though she doesn't describe particular sex acts or give graphic details, though foregrounding the presence of these toys, she once again is leaning into the fact that this song is about a woman, that it is, in her words, a gay girl anthem. The song continues a tradition of sapphic artists portraying their sex lives using specific signifiers of queerness, both anatomical, referring to particular body parts, but also functional, focusing on certain sex acts and practices that are associated with lesbian sex. In these songs, sapphic sexual desire is presented as specific and different to other forms of sex and attraction, and the positive reception of these songs from within the community speaks to the importance of representing these kinds of desires and sex as distinct from generic portrayals of sex that could be widely applicable across demographic groups. Many queer people consider their relationships and sex to be fundamentally different to heterosexual sex and relationship norms. And this is backed up by research. In a study comparing same-sex and straight couples over 12 years, researchers found that queer couples' behavior in some areas, particularly around dealing with conflict, was significantly different to that of straight couples, and concluded that when it comes to emotions, we think these queer couples may operate with very different principles than straight couples. Similarly, sexual practices differ between different groups. In particular, lesbians report receiving the highest level of oral sex across all demographics, according to a 2019 study, which compared gay men, straight couples, lesbians, and bisexuals. This was replicated in a more recent 2021 study, which found that 53% of lesbian participants received cunnilingus during recent sexual encounters, compared to 41% of straight women. And the rates of sex toy use in partner play were also higher amongst lesbian participants, 62%, compared with 40% in non-straight respondents. Since Masters and Johnson's famous 1970s study, researchers have repeatedly found differences between homosexual and heterosexual sex, including that queer couples generally communicate better, are less preoccupied with orgasms, are more attuned to their partner's levels of excitement, and are more emotionally connected, and spend longer having sex. In the 2021 study, 72% of lesbian participants reported sex lasting over 30 minutes, compared to 48% of straight women. In this context, the first two songs on Roan's album do make a lot of sense, arguably before you know that she's a lesbian. Earlier, I mentioned King Princess describing her partner as a god to whom she prays. There's reverence in songs like Lunch and Pink as they elevate queer sex to something that's intertwined with destiny. I think you were made for me, and pink is where all of it starts. The phrase red wine supernova can and have been interpreted in many ways. Some people feel like it's describing red-headed lover. Some think it's about being tipsy while having sex. Others think it's describing period sex. And there's even an interpretation that it describes a vulva specifically because supernovas, it turns out, are vulva-shaped. But either way, Chapel takes queer sex and elevates it to something cosmic. It's worship. It's reverence, it's quasi-religious, but it isn't new. It's time to talk about Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard of Bingen was a nun in the 11th century, who's often interpreted as being queer, in part due to her very close friendship with Richardess von Stade. They were so close, in fact, that when von Stade got transferred to a different abbey, Bergen wrote a letter saying that their separation went against the will of God. After von Stade's death, Bingham wrote that she had cherished her with divine love. Hildegard was also a composer of indisputable bangers like O Ecclesia and Spiritus Sanctus Vivificans. Hildegard's music isn't explicitly queer. unless you give a very loose interpretation to the Ave Maria. But like so many sapphic artists that followed, she had a thing for vulvas. Here's a drawing that she made in ink and gold leaf called God, Cosmos, and Humanity. It's also called Hildegard's Cosmic Egg. It depicts how Hildegard, who was also a scientist, envisioned the universe. You may notice that it's pretty yonic, let's say. Hildegard was an early ecofeminist of sorts, once writing, "The earth is at the same time mother. She is the mother of all that is natural, mother of all that is human. She is the mother of all, for contained in her are the seeds of all." In her song Ave Maria, O Atrix Mater, Bingham writes, "Hail Mary, O authoress of life, rebuilding up salvation's health, for death you have disturbed, that serpent crushed to whom Eve raised herself. Her neck outstretched with puffed up pride, that serpent's head you ground." Essentially claiming quite radically that through the act of birth, Mary redeemed the sins of Eve. If red wine supernova refers to a vulva, then Chapel is essentially doing the same thing as Hildegard, right? Recontextualizing the vulva as a kind of divine genesis. Remember the words of Janelle Monáe, "Pink is where all of it starts." The overlap of worship and sex is common in music. Think Hosier's Take Me to Church, a lesbian icon that we don't have time to cover in this video. But each reference in a queer song pings to ideas from another. The religious imagery of one connects with language use in another, stretching across centuries. We can see, for example, the inverse of worship in Last Dinner Party's hit Sinner, in which the singer longs to have met her love interest before it felt like a sin, aka before she had internalized guilt about sex. And then you trace back to Roan's song and find another element to pull towards, like the playfulness to Chapel's lyrics that reminds me of a lesbian folk song from the 70s, Ode to a Gym Teacher. The song, like Red Wine Supernova, opens with a description of the love interest. "She was a big, tough woman, the first to come along that showed me being female meant you still could be strong. And though graduation meant we had to part, she'll always be a player on the ball field of my heart. So you just go to any gym class and you'll be sure to see one girl who sticks to teacher like a leaf sticks to a tree, one girl who runs the errands and who chases all the balls, one girl who may grow up to be the gayest of all." It's a cute, funny expression of queer joy. You can listen to live recordings and hear the audience laughing along. For me, this song serves as a reminder that lesbians are a fucking riot. Like, lesbians were making jokes about themselves during the height of second wave feminism. "We're here, we're queer, we're actually hilarious, give us a Netflix comedy special." Actually, they already did. Go watch Nanette. One of the biggest misconceptions of lesbian music is that it's like one woman with a guitar singing sad lyrics. And yes, there is plenty of that, and we do love it, but there's also joyful queer music, and there has been for a long time too. Jill Sobiel's I Kissed a Girl is pure fun. So is Soothing Sleeping Lesbians. Even when it comes to a topic that some on the outside might consider to be very important or melancholy, looking at sapphic sex and relationships in the context of hundreds of years of oppression and prejudice, for example, we allow ourselves the freedom to span from silliness to serious and back again. Jealousy and longing. Unrequited desire is a staple of perhaps all music and human art from the beginning of time, but there's something particularly sapphic about yearning. From autostraddle playlists dedicated to it, to Reddit threads, to articles dedicated to the history of longing in lesbian cinema, it's clear that sapphics simply love to yearn. There are hundreds of iterations of this theme, like Dodie's understandably popular song She, which expresses a secret love for another girl. "Am I allowed to look at her like that?" she asks in the opening line, continuing, "Could it be wrong when she's just so nice to look at?" Dodie delivers the words with a brittle sort of feeling, a delicate emotionality that is fearful of itself and its own longing. I actually spoke to Dodie for this video, and she told me how she was feeling at the time the song was released.
I think for a while, in terms of queerness, I think the industry will hate you with, "Oh, she's gay," and then suddenly I'm this like bi icon. I'm like, what? I don't even feel bi enough in myself. It was so strange to talk to so many people and try and pretend that I was like totally cool and proud and okay and strong and being bisexual, when really I was like going through so many questions still. Actually, less so now. I feel like I've done a lot of growth since I was like most in the limelight. And I definitely found myself like almost trying to write queer songs to prove to myself that I was gay enough. But now the irony is I let that go and the queer songs come anyway because, spoiler, I am gay now. Yeah, so I think to be as honest as possible, like I said before, even those like bi-curious songs like Call for the Summer or I Kissed a Girl, I think people can roll their eyes at them, but they still have such a good place in everyone's journey. And like my journey is just as valid as everyone else's. It's very queer. I want to explore it just so honestly.
I think it speaks to the authenticity of many of these sapphic themes that, although their popularity might have artists feeling like they should be writing about them, as Dodie said, when they let themselves write from a personal place, these ideas come up again and again anyway, because they're so rooted in truth. Hayley Kiyoko's song Sleepover describes a close friendship with another woman, with Kiyoko expressing a desire for something better than just being friends. Like Dodie, who sings, "Even when she's next to me, we could not be more far apart," describing the separation brought on by her feelings. Kiyoko also recounts feeling lonely even when with her friend. "I just feel alone. Even when you hold my hand, I just feel alone." Both of these songs are about unrequited love, about longing for a girl who, if not straight, certainly doesn't seem to reciprocate the feelings. There's a particular subgenre of sapphic music which directly addresses the threat of heteronormativity. In these songs, the subject is often a woman who has left the singer for a man or is denying her queerness and pretending to be straight. There are countless songs that treat this humorously, from Ashniko's Slumber Party mentioned earlier to Dove Cameron's Boyfriend, where she sings, "I could be a better boyfriend than him, I could do the shit that he never did, I could be such a gentleman." It makes me feel like I need to fan myself like a Southern belle whenever I listen to it. Hayley Kiyoko's song Curious addresses an ex-lover who has been out of reach for a while and has reappeared with a new boyfriend. Kiyoko asks her ex whether "you let him touch you the way I used to," before recounting a list of contradictory behaviors. "Call me up so late at night. Are we just friends? You say you wanted me, but you're sleeping with him. You think of me, I'm what you see when you look at the sky. I don't believe you. You ain't been loving me right." It's received criticism for being biphobic, but Kyoko has said that the song is an attempt to say, hey, this was a situation that I was in, and it was effed up. Here you go. Have you been in that same situation? Let's start a dialogue about it. The song's title immediately conjures up implications of being curious about same-sex attraction, but within the song, it's Kyoko who's curious. "I'm just curious, is it serious?" she repeatedly asks, trying to get to the bottom of whether her ex's feelings for her new lover are genuine and whether their previous relationship was real or just for fun. This experience of dating a woman who is unable or unwilling to be honest about her feelings and seek shelter in a man is one that Roan also explores in Good Luck Babe, her breakout single released in April 2024. In the song, Roan addresses a lover who refuses to commit to their relationship, telling her, "You can say that we are nothing, but you know the truth. You don't want to call it love." In contrast to Roan herself, who professes, "I just need a little loving, I just need a little air." As in Curious, Good Luck Babe interrogates the seriousness of this relationship and the other woman's reluctance to commit, although in Good Luck Babe, it's explicitly internalized homophobia that seems to be the root cause of this avoidance. You could kiss 100 boys in bars, shoot another shot, try and stop the feeling. Good luck, babe. Echoing Kyoko's comments that I think we all want to be with someone who knows what they want and knows who they are, and I think we're all searching for that. Roan has said that Good Luck Babe is about someone who is denying fate. It's like, okay, good luck, babe, try to deny what your heart is saying. Like, have fun not accepting what's actually going on in your reality. Good luck. In the bridge of Good Luck Babe, Roan returns to an image that we first saw in Phenomenon, that of the unhappy wife in a heterosexual partnership. In both Phenomenon and Good Luck Babe, Roan is critical of the woman's choices, pointing out how her actions have led to her frustration and disappointment. Stuck in the suburbs, you're folding his laundry. Got what you wanted, so stop feeling sorry. Crying at the nail salon. In Good Luck Babe, this scenario happens again, but this time it's Roan's lover whose future is projected, trapped in a heterosexual marriage despite her queer past and denied identity. Again, Roan is fairly harsh. When you wake up next to him in the middle of the night with your head in your hands, you're nothing more than his wife. And when you think about me all those years ago, standing face to face with "I told you so," you know I hate to say it, I told you so. Roan ruminates over and over on an abandonment of heteronormativity, but specifically an escape from oppressive gender roles that are part of that norm. Her work includes a number of comparisons between a queer life and the type of life that is antithetical to that, whether one that's been escaped or one that girls she knew and even loved are still trapped in, subservient to a man. The freedom explored in her music is not just about finding an authentic self-identity, but also a release from the promise of a stifled mainstream lifestyle. The recurring chorus line, "You'd have to stop the world just to stop the feeling," is also the final line of the song, repeated 4 times as the track slows down, as though a record is being slowed on a turntable. This line refers to the lover's denial of their own queerness, and she tries to mask it by kissing boys, maybe even marrying a man someday. Roan cautions her that it's a part of her, that stopping the feeling would be as likely as stopping the world from turning. Although the most straightforward reading of the song, that Roan is addressing a lover who might choose to be with a man instead, is true in that Roan has said that the song is about multiple relationships that she's been in. Interestingly, Roan is not only the speaker. In an interview with Capital FM, Roan said that the bridge is kind of like a love letter to myself, referencing that in the past she's dated and almost married men before realizing that is not who I wanted to be. This fluidity, with Roan occupying the positions both of the speaker and the subject of the song, speaks to what a common experience this is for queer women, lesbians, bisexuals, pansexuals, and all other people who identify as sapphic in some way. They're still impacted by compulsory heterosexuality, not just in terms of the fear of losing a lover to a relationship which is more socially acceptable, but also in terms of their own identity and choices. Obviously, there are plenty of queer women who are in healthy and loving relationships with men, but what songs like this are really talking about is the kind of toxic heteronormativity that means that relationships with men, when entered into purely to try and get away from your own queerness, can potentially develop into these more stereotypical traditional roles of man and woman. That there is something about fleeing from your queerness, whether that is specifically a relationship with a woman or just acknowledging it within yourself, that might lead people into specifically unfulfilling relationships, kind of trying to prove that they are distanced from queerness, that they are different, that they are normal, that they can live a life that they've been told is what they should want. And in a lot of cases, that is a life with a man. And it turns out that queer women have been writing about men getting in the way for a long time. In fact, all the way back to the OG originator of the word lesbian, Sappho of Lesbos. Sappho, who we categorize as a poet, but whose poems would have originally been experienced as songs, as a lyrical poet, dropped this track well over 2,000 years ago. "He is more than a hero. He is a god in my eyes. The man who was allowed to sit beside you. He who listens intimately to the sweet murmur of your voice, the enticing laughter that makes my own heart beat fast. If I meet you suddenly, I can't speak. My tongue is broken. A thin flame runs under my skin, seeing nothing, hearing only my own ears drumming. I drip with sweat, trembling shakes my body, and I turn paler than dry grass. At such times, death isn't far from me." In this poem, Sappho expresses envy and admiration for a man who is able to be close to her love interests. He is allowed to sit beside you, whereas Sappho, a woman, is not. At least not in that context. And interestingly, that man's importance, the godliness in the poem, relies entirely on his ability to receive the affections of said woman. The second half of the poem is the most quintessential description of gay panic I think I've ever seen. Her overwhelming feelings are unpleasant and visceral. It renders her blind and speechless. She's out of control. There's a clear connection lyrically between Sappho and the more recent male obstacle songs from the 2000s and 2010s. Remember how Dodie even starts her song with, "Am I allowed to look at her like that?" paralleling the first line of Sappho's poem around social permission. Songs like Curious and Boyfriend differ from Sappho in that the singer possesses a confidence that Sappho does not. In Curious, Kyoko belittles the male obstacle, questioning if he can satisfy her love's interests, needs, the way that she knows she can. In Boyfriend, Dove Cameron knows that she's a better option for the love interest because she can do all the shit that he never did, plus all her clothes would fit her. With Curious and Good Luck Babe, there's also a trace of bitterness absent from Sappho's work. The love interests in that song have more agency than Sappho's love interest, and as a result, they make mistakes. Sonically, rather than lyrically, I also want to flag a similarity between Good Luck Babe and some of the songs of Joan Armatrading. I'm calling it here. Some show is going to feature Willow and she's going to have her Kate Bush moment. Anytime now. Armatrading and Roan are cousins, not sisters sonically, but if you enjoy Chapel Roan's use of synth, strong drums and impressive vocals and kind of 80s production, then give Armatrading a listen. Start with Me, Myself, I and Drop the Pilot if you want to dance, and listen to Willow and Love and Affection if you want to feel lots of things. Now for a quick ad from returning channel partner Raycon, because I don't use a teleprompter for these videos, but instead I use a theatre technique called recorded delivery, which is essentially that I listen to a recording of myself reading the script through earbuds and then say the words that come like a millisecond afterwards. So I've literally been using Raycons in every video that you've seen from me since I first got a pair in like 2021, I think. They've been essential to my work on this channel for years. And now they're returning to sponsor another video. You've probably heard of Raycon's everyday earbuds already, but they've recently released an upgraded model with new features like active noise cancellation and the ability to pair with 2 devices at once. And I'm particularly excited about the awareness mode, which lets a level of external sounds in so that you can be aware of your surroundings. So for me, it means I can hear if like the camera starts beeping or if Sparks needs to get my attention while we shoot. But I know that other people use it for like noise sensitivity when they still want to hear some of what's going on around them. I also have a dangerous combination of long shoot days and ADHD, which means I always forget to charge my equipment. This battery is currently dying on the camera, but these things have 32 hours of battery and a new quick charge function that gives 90 minutes of battery for just 10 minutes of charging. They have a bunch of color options, but I don't think it was a great mystery which one I was going to pick. My style is simply blue. I don't know what to tell you. Also, it was a complete coincidence that this sponsorship lined up with this particular music theme video, but we love a serendipitous happenstance. So if you want to help support the channel and check out Raycon's new designs and features, then click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/Rowan to get 15% off your Raycon purchase, plus free shipping. All right, back to the video. A response to homophobia. Sometimes sapphic artists' work attempts to challenge homophobia in a direct address. We've seen this theme range from melancholy and tragic to angry and defiant in the past. Probably the best example of this idea at its purest is Lady Gaga's Born This Way, a song that has been used in inspirational video montages of pride parades and played at every pop-heavy gay club in the world and hungered after by ad execs looking for the perfect song for some June-time marketing. We can see in lyrics like God Makes No Mistakes the explicit engagement with homophobic rhetoric, particularly the brand of religious justified prejudice in an era before nationwide equal marriage in the US, when these kinds of arguments were seemingly daily public talking points on news and talk shows. Born This Way skirted the personal narrative to deliver a wider message of acceptance, literally telling us no matter gay, straight, or bi, lesbian, transgender life, but also naming a bunch of other marginalized identities based on race and disability. Like, the song is working overtime. We're all born this way. Every single thing that's different unique about you, you're born this way, you're good. But that isn't the only song of this kind. Far from it. We also have examples like Hayley Kiyoko's Girls Like Girls, with the iconic chorus line, girls like boys do, nothing new. This song paints the nameless figure of the homophobe as a little embarrassing rather than a dangerous figure. Like, oh buddy, you don't know about gay people? Kind of cringe at you. This isn't anything new. This kind of implied humiliation tactic is shown through the versus narrative where Kyoko sings, stealing kisses from your missus, does it make you freak out? Got you fussing, got you worried, scared to let your guard down. Exposing a type of homophobia driven by insecure and fearful masculinity. In contrast, we also have examples like the gentle love song from Mary Lambert, She Keeps Me Warm. Here, the lyrics centralize a romantic sapphic relationship to give a personal face to homophobia. The words, I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to, and I'm not crying on Sundays, love is patient, love is kind, similarly to Born This Way, directly address homophobic talking points of religious hatred and claims that being queer is something that you choose or can change. In Rowan's work, the song that exemplifies this idea of addressing homophobia head-on most clearly to me, and most iconically at this point, is Pink Pony Club. This number is a mix between contemplative and celebratory, the contrast between the life the narrator used to live in Tennessee and the new world found in West Hollywood. The song was inspired by Rowan's first visit to a gay bar, the Abbey, where she encountered queer community in person for perhaps the first time. The contrast between the two is heightened by her own upbringing within a devoutly Christian household. In one interview, she explained, I was told this city is demonic and Satanists live here. But when I got to West Hollywood, it opened my eyes to the fact that everything I was afraid of wasn't always true, especially what I'd been told about the queer community. Going to gay clubs for the first time, it felt spiritual. That sense of spirituality is played with in the lyrics here. She talks about her wicked dreams of leaving her hometown, mirroring the beliefs of queerness as something sinful and tempting rather than a legitimate identity. Her mother laments in the chorus of the song about her daughter's fate, God, what have you done? In contrast to the joy the narrator is finding at the euphemistic Pink Pony Club, that setting indeed becomes a kind of new church. The community, purpose, and belonging that so many find refuge in within religious buildings is replicated in a new way with a holy queer space. The song creates a sense of inevitability to queerness. When Roan sings, "On the stage in my heels, it's where I belong," it's like the pull of fate, a kind of destiny that can't be escaped. Her dreams are prophecies, her life slotting together when she's discovered this space she's meant to be in. I think there's something particularly interesting in discussions online around what the song is about, specifically what the Pink Pony Club is. For sapphic audiences, often brought to Roan's music by other queer fans, or their music app algorithms, or searching for lesbian pop explicitly, the image of the Pink Pony Club as a gay bar is pretty obvious. However, I've also seen a lot of straight girls belting out this song and assuming it's about a girl who runs away from home to become a stripper. These listeners realize from the lyrics and the tone of the song that Roan is singing about confronting some wider social oppression, but the heteronormativity of their worldview stops them from being able to connect these dots and see what alternative and accurate readings there might also be. Now, there isn't any explicit mention of, the word lesbian in the song, but the way that the club is codified as something that would make your mother pray for you, as somewhere where you would be dancing as a performance of freedom within the song, of the implication of wickedness, the fact it's being described euphemistically at all, for many straight and cis women, a strip club is like the only answer that makes sense, that would have their mothers ashamed of them, that would conjure images of religious penitence. For me, it points to the limits that mainstream audiences may well inadvertently place on queer artists, even now, through their own biases and ignorance. And it's particularly frustrating for me, I think, because the homophobia being responded to here is deeply personal. It isn't a song about a vague audience of potential homophobes or a collective address to the church or prejudiced people in general. It's focused on one key familial relationship, the narrator and her mother. It makes the protests feel emotionally devastating, but also reduces the presence of homophobia to a single voice compared to the rousing chorus of fellow clubgoers. It balances the spectrum that we see in other songs on this theme between an emotional personal account and a community-wide celebration or call to action. It also adds a layer of complexity, which is echoed at the end of Roan's debut album in the song California, in the sense of homesickness that permeates the lyrics. This isn't just a defiant fuck you to a homophobic past, because it's also clouded by the tragedy in not being able to move on completely from a place and people and life that don't necessarily deserve or serve you. Rather than building a song from doubt to confidence, Roan reverses it to end on the idea that she is still struggling, even as she is going to keep dancing in this new life that is right for her, telling her mother, "Don't think I've left you all behind, still love you in Tennessee, you're always on my mind." This sense of defiance isn't just in the lyrics, but within the context of the song. This was the start of Roan's transformation into the image of a star that we see today. Prior to her move to LA, she talks about not feeling comfortable dressing and presenting how she wanted on a day-to-day basis, let alone the exaggerated drag persona of her performances. For many just starting to hear about Roan, it might be easy to assume that this was the work of a seasoned queer veteran looking back and writing about her past self in Pink Pony Club, but it was actually released back in 2020, having been written right after she experienced the Abbey for the first time. And she said, "I did not know what to write about until I moved to California. I was having such a hard time finding myself, and I still feel this way. I feel like I don't really fit into the pop writing industry. I feel like I'm a little too country, but I'm not country. In California, I miss the seasons. I miss the simplicity of the Midwest." I think this speaks to the evergreen nature of this theming, the story of queer community discovery, that it hit so hard over 4 years after it was first released. But it also speaks to this idea of sapphic music having a longer history than so many of us realize, even within a single artist's work. This song isn't just about self-discovery around her sexuality, but also a discovery of a joy that can be found in that community. And more than that, the ways that joy can branch out into all areas of your life. It's no accident that Roan's development as an artist is accelerated once she stepped into a world of queer possibility. This song touches on many of the response to homophobia ideas that we see in other works over the years. But the power of it to me is in the way that it expands beyond just here is one sub story to stir the heartstrings, or being homophobic is cringe and bad, or being gay is okay, it gives us an image of queerness as an actively positive force in her life. It's not just a love is love, we're all equal sentiment, but a declaration that actually, for her and others like her, this life of queer authenticity is actively better. Now, the idea of a song that says fuck you to the haters, it's not unique to queer music, but when the haters are going after your entire community using politics, religion, and family relationships to do it, and the thing they're hating on is a key part of you and your loved ones, and also something that you're not able or interested in changing, yeah, it's no surprise to me that this theme is such a cornerstone of queer music, not just for the artists themselves, but also if they're thinking about the response from their audience. One response to the song online reads, "Underneath the lyrics about dancing in a club, there's a heartbeat of queer Americana. How we spend so long folding ourselves into the smallest version possible, how people try to mold us into who they want us to be, how we hide our dreams. When we finally figure ourselves out, finally be proud of our identity, it really does feel like dancing on the stage in heels, because we're finally the star of our own life." That feeling captured by Roan in the song feels universal to many queer fans, and especially, I think, the way it balances the sad against the joyful, the defiant and the apologetic. And it's a feeling that has a long history behind it. If you enjoyed the queer defiance in this song, then you might enjoy lesbian punk music. Now, punk didn't exactly start out as a lesbian-friendly genre necessarily. It was a lot of white men, as NPR put it. Punk scenes, at least in the early stages, tended to be heterogeneous places. They were created by the rabble, the hoi polloi. Everybody was welcome. But these scenes struggled with homophobic, sexist, and racist elements. There are plenty of examples of straight punks using queer sex as gross-out punchlines. But queer punk did start to take shape. The Runaways, fronted by lesbian Joan Jett, combined punk and rock and found mainstream success. Riot Grrrl and queercore music, emphasizing political unrest and radical demands specific to women and queer experiences at the time, gave rise to a legacy that includes so many iconic artists, from Team Dresch and The Third Sex to Bikini Kill and Sleater Kinney. Punk and its subgenres encouraged the explicit portrayal of ugly emotions, fantasies of violence, jealousy, rage, laziness, lust, which, considering how queer people often have to present themselves and their relationships as sort of perfect to society in order to be seen to deserve rights, this is kind of radical when it comes from queer artists. Punk also allowed singers to present themselves in non-feminine ways, many embodying gothic or masculine aesthetics and giving a freedom of self-expression that we still see in the work of people like Roan today. Roan's own personal anthem within Pink Pony Club, tied so completely to a singular experience at the Abbey, is also tied to decades of music ruminating on the same feelings and experiences. Self-discovery. The process of self-discovery, particularly in regards to a singer's sexuality, is a cornerstone of many sapphic pop songs, understandably. Not just a moment of declaration, of saying, I am gay, but the messiness of exploration, the doubts, the joys. Probably the first sapphic song that many people my age ever heard was the infamous All the Things She Said by Russian duo Tattoo, and it fits this self-discovery narrative perfectly. I'm in serious shit. I feel totally lost. If I'm asking for help, it's only because being with you has opened my eyes. The music video, iconically, starred the two women dressed as schoolgirls in the rain running through a prison with this dystopian vision of girls being punished by the state for being who they are as they experience young love for the first time. The song describes their relationship as opening their eyes to the world, the idea that this revelation has them confused but committed to each other. This has then become controversial subsequently as fans of the duo discovered that they weren't together, and at the time claimed not to be queer, but said that they were making music for lesbians, but they weren't lesbians themselves. But in the years since, one of the members of Tattoo, Julia Volkova, has come out as bisexual, even as the expansion of Russian censorship laws, including the banning of support for queer rights and identities, means that coming out is a potentially dangerous proposition. Even outside of Russian censorship, the 2000s were an interesting era. Princess Weeks has a great video about performative bisexuality in the noughties music industry, which I recommend watching to get a more complete picture of the complicated dynamics at play with bands like Tattoo. Probably the most notorious song that runs parallel to this is Katy Perry's I Kissed a Girl, with lyrics like, I kissed a girl just to try it, hope my boyfriend don't mind it. It spawned 1,000 think pieces. It's a song rooted in the homophobic idea of sapphic connections not being real or only for men's attention. So is it a messy but authentic look at the process of sexual experimentation that many people connect to? Is it a tongue-in-cheek bi anthem that we shouldn't read much into? Who can say? But the idea that Perry's song is the queer bait work of a straight girl trying to sell the image of a porny lesbian stereotype to men is not it. In a speech in 2017, she revealed, "My first words were mama and dada, God and Satan. When I was growing up, homosexuality was synonymous with the word abomination and hell, a place of gnashing of teeth, continuous burning of skin, and probably Mike Pence's ultimate guest list for a barbecue. So most of my unconscious adolescence, I prayed the gay away at my Jesus camps. But then in the middle of it all, in a twist of events, I found my gift. And my gift introduced me to people outside my bubble, and my bubble started to burst." This experience of a queer woman escaping an oppressive and prejudiced environment where religious bigotry affected her very sense of self to go on to find her authentic truth within the acceptance of the queer community in the music industry, it's Roan's story too, just a decade prior. This image of the excusable moment of sapphic desire, the kiss in front of a boyfriend at a party, the summer fling that was never meant to last, the sleepover yearning, they're all motifs that return again and again in these songs, from Demi Lovato's Call for the Summer to Hayley Kiyoko's Sleepover. Not because these artists are trying to say something about the illegitimacy of queerness, but because these motifs are absolutely a part of many sapphic experiences growing up. And, of course, Chapel Roan has a song that digs into this experience of self-discovery, Naked in Manhattan. I told you we'd come back to it. Because, in fact, this was her first explicitly queer song. But in her own words, "I had never even kissed a girl when these songs, Naked in Manhattan and Red Wine Supernova, were written. It was all what I wished my life could be." Writers, artists, and musicians using their creative outlets to write about not just things they're certain of, but also elements of self that they are still figuring out feels vitally important to me. In a time when so many people are throwing out accusations of queer baiting to real people, or demanding that they come out to prove that they should be talking about these experiences, acknowledging the importance of giving space to people to explore and question is key to countering this impulse. Roan's lyrics continue this tradition of girlhood imagery tied to queer experience, but contrasts it with imagery of her adult life. This isn't a song about past experiences in her teen years, it's a genuine narrative of self-discovery in adulthood. It speaks to the concept of queer time, of the ways that many of us have normal teen experiences of romance and sex out of sync with our straight and cis counterparts. New crush, high school love again, the rush of slumber party kissing. There is an innocence here, giving us traditional straight teenage experiences with a queer twist. Roan is legitimizing something that might be considered straight girl titillation by linking it to both love and the emotional burden of the following lines, "Push you down a million times," focusing on the way that she's been oppressing those genuine feelings. We also see this mental comparison between experiences with men and women. Boys suck and girls I've never tried. There is a sad truth here, the kind of lesbian experience of discovering a lack of interest in boys, but still seeing true lesbian legitimacy only available after you've had experiences with girls. But also the fact that this is more difficult. She sings, "We both know we're getting drunk tonight." The idea that you can only have these sapphic experiences with an excuse or liquid courage, it's not the same as a straight kiss in so many ways. Even as she longs for that connection, there is something getting in the way internally. But the music video for this song debuts the thrift store pop star drag queen style that became her calling card: fire engine red hair, elaborate hyper femme outfits cobbled together from thrift store pieces, a pin-up girl burlesque cheekiness. It was a sign that Roan had at last found a new image that she loved. The song itself is about a version of Roan who is still mired in self-doubt and inexperience around her queerness. But the process of creating the song from idea to published video gives us an incredible timeline of her growth in this way. Her ascension to stardom wasn't just about time to grow in artistic confidence, it's inextricably linked to her growth in personal confidence as a lesbian. They're inescapably connected. I spoke to French Madagascan queer musician Nella about her experiences as an artist during this rise in sapphic pop in the mainstream, and they told me about their own journey from writing songs that, although personal, were not explicitly queer, compared to her version of herself as an artist in the wake of this representation.
I think for me it's been quite an interesting journey because for a very long time I felt very anxious and uncomfortable about singing about women and using she her pronouns in my song because I wasn't out yet. But I've grown so much as an artist and as a person on those past few years, and just hearing so much sapphic representation in music lately I think has definitely helped me feel more comfortable with it. So thank you, girlies. You saved my life, for real.
But stressed that This dedication to both personal integrity, but also consideration for the impact that your work might have on an audience, feels particularly poignant for queer artists. The potential impact of your work can be enormous. It's a sentiment echoed by another artist that I spoke to, Kelsey, who performs under the stage name Norma Knight.
It just feels so much easier. It feels so much more authentic on stage. People have said they notice a difference when I'm performing now as myself, that I'm a completely different person on stage and off stage, because both of them help me at the same time, because I'm finding myself in music, but by finding myself in the music, I'm finding myself off stage as well. So it's just been a really good thing. I've always been the person that's had to express myself through art because I'm quite introverted, and it's like the only way I can express myself. I'm still on a journey of discovering who I am, but it's really giving me that pathway to figure out who I am.
In my interview with Dodie, we discussed her experiences as a musician who started on YouTube, has been able to experience a direct connection with her audience over the years, both online and in person. And she told me about how she's come to see that queer audience in particular.
It makes them shine in my eyes because they're my favorite. Like, I think whenever I meet people like that who like tell me a little bit about their history or their queerness, or they're like, oh, me and my wife listen to your music, anything like that, it just like glitters. I think it's so special. And there's I say passion, like there is like a passion and an enthusiasm with life that like queer people in particular have and want to share whenever I meet them, or if they send me messages online or post things. I share audience members with so many other amazing artists and queer artists, and it's a great thing. It's such a great thing, and I'm really enjoying this mixture of this, what I thought was like a like small corner of the world. I keep saying Chapel because she's just so iconic, and I'm like, hands up, God bless her. I think she's just doing amazing things. She's like making it cool, and like I feel like that, I want to say army, but like that like space is being nourished and in a way that it's like it deserves, and it has deserved for so long.
Some queer singers through history are celebrated because of the defiant queerness of their work. Chavela Vargas refused to change the pronouns in the love songs by straight men that she covered, for example, and that's become a key part of her legacy. But I wanted to give some credit to the queer women and singers throughout the years who, like Nella, used gender-neutral or masculine pronouns either because they were figuring out their own identities or because they were resisting the limitations placed upon them by their label. Country singer Wilma Burgess preferred to use gender-neutral pronouns in her songs. Dusty Springfield, a lesbian, sang about male love interests, but queer audiences still connected to the longing in her music. Are these songs explicitly queer? No. But then again, neither is the Sistine Chapel, but it's still queer art because it was made by queer people. Other legacies. It's not just these 4 thematic legacies that Roan and this sapphic summer is following on from. It's also the very act of queer performance itself. Performance has long been part of queer life, from the necessary performances of cis and straight identities to keep us safe in everyday life, to the freeing and empowering experiences that many find in persona-based drag. There is something powerful in creating a public version of yourself or your art to be shared in community, especially with other queer people. I made a video a few years ago now about why Dungeons & Dragons is so popular with queer nerds, and I think the performance aspect is such a key part of that. Not in a self-absorbed, attention-seeking way, although I'm sure for some that is enjoyable too, but the ability to experiment with gender presentation or romantic experiences with the protection of a mask. So many people I talked to for that video spoke about the ways that roleplay in D&D, even as a silly little guy in a home game with friends, had come to mean so much more than that to them. It gave them a sense of play. It lowered the stakes in ways that mainstream discourse on trans and queer identities don't allow. These identities were meant to be serious, were meant to say something, and they potentially came with some level of responsibility to be a model version of whatever label that you picked for yourself. But performers allowed them, even amongst friends in private games, to explore without that pressure. I think we see in the performance work of Roan a willingness to embrace play. She is a drag queen, and the development of that now iconic aesthetic of hers ran alongside her growth as an artist and as a person. But it's just one aspect of her inner self, an aspect that is more confident and experienced. She wore clownish white-face makeup because that's what the country boys called gay people in my hometown, clowns. She plays campily with the signifiers of her small-town background, yodeling vocal trills and camo print merch. Perhaps most significantly, she is unapologetically sexual in ways that her creator cannot quite bring herself to be. For me, there is an obvious historical parallel here with the queer artists who rose to fame through performance, particularly in the first half of the 20th century. If we think about the sapphic icons of that time, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, Gladys Bentley, who pioneered in the blues and jazz spaces, we see their status codified in their performances. I think many people not familiar with this older era of queer music might be surprised by the openness of these artists, who sang not just overtly queer songs, but ones that were explicitly sexual and open. Bentley rose to fame performing at queer speakeasies, headlining shows during the Harlem Renaissance, and key to her work was performing as an unmistakably masculine Black lesbian, dressed to the nines in menswear and flirting with women. She performed during the pansy craze with a backing group of 8 liberally painted male Sebians with effeminate voices and gestures. The lyrics of her officially recorded tracks are mostly about a woman mistreated by men, but reports of her live performances are full of the ways that she twisted and subverted those songs and others for her audience. So adept was she at this art, Wilbur Young wrote, that she could take the most tender ballad and convert it into a new loaf with her filthy lyrics. He added, in fact, some of these lyrics would be so rank that the house lady would look on in despair, while Gladys, not content with merely singing them herself, would encourage the paying guests to join in on the chorus, which they did willingly. This was itself part of the queerness of her performance, part of the masculinity of her onstage persona, to push boundaries of taste beyond what women were even meant to know about, let alone sing about. Her interactions with the live crowd were part of her artistry, her connection with audiences across venues and decades. We see the legacy of Bentley in the work of sapphic artists now, not just in aesthetic or a gift for performance, but in very direct ways. Musician and poet Shirley Ammons, for example, has a whole album dedicated to Bentley from 2013 entitled Twilight for Gladys Bentley. Inspiration for the album came from her wondering what type of music that Bentley would be releasing if she was rising to prominence today. I concluded that she would create hip-hop music, as it's a music of posturing and prowess of our day, no different than blues was during Bentley's era. Ma Rainey, the mother of blues, was performing live for over 10 years before striking a recording deal, beginning with a career in black minstrelry and vaudeville shows. Once introduced to blues music, however, it set the course for the rest of her career. Her dynamism on stage created a buzz around her performances that sold record numbers of tickets around the US. She also made explicit references in her lyrics to her sexuality. Where she went, I don't know. I mean to follow everywhere she goes. Folks say I'm crooked. I didn't know where she took it. I want the whole world to know. I went out last night with a crowd of my friends. It must have been women, because I don't like no men. Wear my clothes just like a fan. Talk to the gals just like any old man. Far from censoring this element of her work, her management, Paramount, released an advert that emphasized it as part of her identity. She wears a men's 3-piece suit and fedora and mingles with 2 women on a corner, while a policeman watches suspiciously in the shadows. Roan is the latest part of this queer performance legacy. Her album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, was released in September of 2023, but wasn't an immediate commercial success. Undoubtedly, alongside the power of a cult following online, her performances supporting Olivia Rodrigo on the Guts World Tour and her live performances at Coachella, Lollapalooza, and the Governor's Ball all solidified her as not just an artist to listen to, but one to figuratively and literally watch. I spoke to musician Jasmine, who's just signed with Phoebe Bridgers' Satisfactory Records, about the ways that performance and community intertwine, particularly for sapphic and trans artists.
There is this very intertwined nature when it comes to the creation of the music and the performance of the music. I'm performing entirely with trans women in my band, and there were so many trans people and lesbians involved in the creation of my recent recording. That kind of intertwining of community and embedding of ourselves into a wider fabric of trans and lesbian artistry is definitely something that's more conscious. We're definitely choosing who we make our music with, building an artist community that in parallel is building a community of listeners.
I also think that part of why these queer artists are blowing up at this moment is the prevalence of social media, particularly TikTok and other visual mediums in the marketing of music, and a new kind of performance. Nella emphasized this in our interview too.
Yeah, I definitely think that thanks to TikTok and Twitter in the past few years, we've seen an emergence of so many sapphic artists. I'm thinking namely of like Girl in Red or Ash Nico a few years back, but obviously this year it's been such a sapphic renaissance. We've seen René Rapp blow up, Chapel Roan of course, and yeah, I think it's just so refreshing this year to see so many sapphic artists get their flowers.
Songs that we might previously have known about through audio alone now come with immediate visual connotations on top of the lyrics. And the clipping nature of TikTok sounds means an artist can section off the most distilled, queer, in-your-face moment from a song to introduce it to the world, even if it doesn't come until halfway through. There is no doubt then of its queerness with girls kissing in a music video or captions full of lesbian hashtags and emojis, even clips of podcast interviews and talking head answers to questions about sexuality and gender. Online performances have become a part of the fabric of the lesbian renaissance as much as traditional live music performances. In conclusion, how can we keep this summer going? So, we've seen that what is happening this summer is not entirely new, that we've had historical musical movements, individual artists, queer collectives, and more making sapphic music for hundreds of years. For me, the point here isn't trying to take away from the current success of these artists. The point is actually twofold. One, how do we ensure that this doesn't become another example of queer art which is potentially forgotten or underplayed in music history? And two, how do we ensure that the full breadth of sapphic artists are able to benefit from the current increase in mainstream celebrity, financing, backing, and exposure? Let's take that second point first. Because you might have noticed a bunch of the artists that I talked about in this video who have pioneered sapphic music are Black, from Bessie Smith to Janelle Monáe, yet the current sapphic summer is primarily a list of white artists. Chappelle Roan, René Rapp, Billie Eilish, Boy Genius. It's something Nella spoke to me about from her own personal experience.
I do think that women of color are dramatically underrepresented in the sapphic community. You can just check that by like checking any sapphic playlist on Spotify. It's mainly white artists. And I think it's just very frustrating because I think the sapphic community in general is just represented by whiteness. And I think that's sad because this community is so varied.
I think a lack of awareness of the shoulders on which these artists of today are standing on is specifically an erasure of Black queer artists in this context. It isn't just about the principle of representation, it's also an acknowledgement of the ways that artists who aren't this white cis default are just as capable of making smash hit music that appeals to a mainstream audience, but also that there are experiences, messages, and themes that may well be unique to them, which aren't being appreciated in the same way. Universality is ultimately a lie, but it's a lie that's had the music industry in a chokehold for years. Just think about the type of pop songs that we've seen parodied so often with lyrics about like, you make me smile because of your smile, you have hands, unless you're a person without hands. Like this generic set of lyrics that don't dig any deeper for fear of alienating the people who both do and don't have hands, I guess. To me, what we are seeing, a microcosm of within these recent sapphic songs, is the ways a more personal and authentic vision of queerness can still connect with people, even those who don't share that specific experience. Kelsey also expressed the limitations of what is seen as marketable even during this apparent renaissance.
But I really hope to see that the labels in the mainstream can open up to not just that kind of subsection of queer artists or sapphic artists, but other subsections like non-white artists and disabled artists. And I feel like we have a really long way to go with those things. I can only say from my disabled experience, but I found it hard to even have mainstream labels even be interested in me, or I'm an actor as well, have mainstream kind of films and things be interested in me because my aesthetic, I'm a woman and my disability is on my face, and I've had a lot of trouble with that because they don't see it as marketable, they don't see it as beautiful or marketable. There's still so much work to do because I'm in a bubble of people that are very accepting of this, but in labels and within mainstream media there's still so much to do.
I spoke to Jasmine about the ways that overarching themes in this video, response to homophobia, feelings of longing, have their own unique angle within the work of many trans artists, including herself.
I think specifically for trans women, there is this, I feel like it's adjacent to this like running thread but I would put it as distinct and call it more like nihilistic. And I'm thinking about artists like Ruby or Sophie, obviously, or Anoni, who write from a trans perspective. And I think that kind of style of songwriting tends to be a lot darker, though also coming alongside that kind of lesbian yearning theme. And I think that comes from the kind of not only the disconnection from society because of a trans lesbian's sapphic identity, but from our disconnection from our community because of how difficult it is to access community as a trans woman. And I think that was quite a beautiful part of my recording process. I was in the studio with the girls from Manchester, Eden and Phoenix, who are in my band, and they're very much my family members, especially following the recording experience, which was deeply bonding. And as it was for me and Lucy and Phoebe and Julian, and while we were close before, and particularly I was close with Lucy, I think that sort of connection with community was very healing, especially since that's a theme for my music, is this kind of more nihilistic yearning, which isn't just for romance but also for community. And to be provided that in the sort of creation of this music is kind of deeply healing, and I think embedded into the music itself.
Leaving room for these reinterpretations of old themes, as well as the invention of new topics of exploration, is key to me. But also utilizing the roadmap of success that we've seen already, supporting your favorite artists through sales and listens and gigs, but also social media, being a voice of word of mouth support. We need record labels to be searching for this talent outside of specific bubbles. We need music journalists to take a chance on covering up-and-coming sapphic artists who don't fit the current mold. We need programmers in venues to pay attention to barriers to entry for emerging artists, pioneering models of payment that don't disproportionately punish those who can't afford to front costs with family money. And we also can't assume that because of the levels of success we're seeing from breakthrough artists, that there aren't any issues behind the scenes for sapphic musicians still.
I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, but there have certainly been projects that I've been involved in where it started with this bright-eyed hope that we would fight against the music industry and not care, and left exhausted from being caught up in the machine because of the pressure of it not being just yourself. There are people who you work with, that you share this project with, people who have invested into you that you don't want to let down, who are at the top of labels telling you that this is the way it has to be done. I honestly think it always just comes down to men forgetting what I said at the start, the passion of queer women runs this industry. The passion of women, queer people, that is what it comes down to. It comes from authenticity and people seeing themselves in music and having that real connection.
The cultural moment we're in right now is being dubbed a lesbian renaissance. And the meaning of that word is key here. Renaissance is about rebirth, a return, a revival of what's already been there. It's easy to forget that you too are part of history, that the women who blushed and laughed as Gladys Bentley urged them to sing baldy lyrics are echoes of the beaming faces in the latest underground gig for an up-and-coming sapphic artist who goes viral for blowing a kiss at her audience. We have always been here, and we always will be. And honestly, aren't we lucky that we have so many artists who are capturing the beauty and pain and steeliness and rage and joy of that fact in the magic of song? Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts and maybe even your favorite sapphic songs in the description. If you are interested in the music that I have talked about within this video, I'm going to be uploading a playlist of every song that's been mentioned and all of the artists that I've talked about on my Patreon. So if you want to head over there and maybe support me make videos like this in the future, then that will be available. There's also a ton of other fun perks. There's a Discord where we hang out, so check it out. And a final thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video and literally being in my ear this entire time. Check out the link in the description. And until I see you next time, bye.